So, welcome to the MQ Open Mind podcast. So, I'm Rory O'Connor, and we also have,
Craig Perryman. Hi.
and Craig and I are really excited to bring you this brand new podcast. And over the coming weeks, we're hoping to really discuss lots of issues around mental health and well-being, and have really interesting discussions with people who have obviously their own challenges and experiences of mental health, as we all do, but people from all different walks of life. So, what Craig and I are hoping to do in this mini episode is tell you something about who we are and our plans beyond what I've just said for our podcast. So, Craig, do you want to kick us off with other issues we're hoping to cover?
I guess really with this podcast, what I'd love is for people to understand a little bit more about mental health research, a little bit more about what MQ does, and I think fundamentally help end stigmas. Because a
Yeah.
lot of these stereotypes and stigmas that have been going on for so many years affect so many people. The whole stereotype about going to a doctor and stuff like that. You just want to have an opportunity to help people. And that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, no, that's a nice, succinct way of putting summarizing what we're hoping to achieve. And I think things will evolve as we try things, and some things will work better than others. But it's all about having an informal conversation about obviously a really, really important topic. So maybe then let's begin then, Craig.
Mhm.
So obviously I know you obviously through our links with MQ. So maybe can you tell us a bit about who you are and maybe what brought you to join MQ?
It's such a difficult question, answering about yourself. But what I would say is I'm a filmmaker. I love making movies. I love writing movies. I love watching movies. And I guess what brought me to MQ, I have a background of psychology, not as extensive as yours, of course. I've only got a bachelor's. But I've always loved psychology. I've always loved understanding about people, understanding about like mental health, and MQ is the only organization that is spending so much money on understanding why, understanding mental illness, as opposed to just, oh, here's the how to improve your mental health. It's that question why is the kind of, it's the nerdy side of mental health, and I love that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head with regard to MQ. It's the only dedicated mental health research charity in the UK. But crucially, not only are we trying to advance our understanding and treatment of mental illness and mental health problems, but what's so important to the mission of MQ is getting that message out there so we reach the research evidence, the best quality research evidence, the best quality knowledge and experience of people with lived experience of mental health
Mhm.
gets out there. And indeed, all the work that we do at MQ, it's in collaboration. We're all partners in research, and those partners include researchers like me, policy people at the policy and grant making end like you, but crucially at the heart of everything is people with lived experience, because it's people's stories of lived experience we're hoping to convey in some of the episodes moving forward. And so I think I'm really excited about that end of things. But can I ask you one quick question? When you're a film person, so what's your genre? What's your favorite genre of film?
I would say my favorite genre of film is comedies. I love to laugh. I love, making other people laugh. That's I think comedy is a great art form. I once worked in the cinema, and they asked me, it was my first ever job. They asked me what my favorite movie was. I just thought it was just a normal question. I put down Dumb and Dumber. That's my favorite movie. Little did I know is that they were going to stick my favorite movie on my name badge. So it just
Oh,
said Craig Dumb and Dumber. So every
oh.
time I'd serve someone, they'd be like, "Why does it say Dumb and Dumber?" It's like, don't. You just no
And
point.
did you get it changed?
No, because that's my favorite movie. Why would I get it changed?
Yeah, I have an awful admission to make. I've never seen it.
I hope you not.
No, I don't know why I haven't actually, because I know everybody raves about it, and it's actually lots of people's favorite movie.
Yeah,
But I don't know why I haven't seen it. What year did it come out?
94.
Yeah, so no, because Yeah, so I don't know why I didn't see it. I'm just thinking what I was doing in 1994. What I was doing, you talked about your bachelor's degree. So I think I was just finishing my bachelor's degree in 1994. And I don't want to know what you were doing or whatever age you were, obviously, because um,
I
my
could
great.
say, but
So here, so getting back to the podcast, and yeah, so that's what we mean. So I've been doing research into suicide and the broader mental health sphere for the last 25 years. And as you know, I've worked with MQ over a number of years, and I'm a member of the MQ Science Council. But I think what I've always been so impressed about by MQ since I first came in contact with them was that the people who work at MQ really care about the research. And I'm not saying that other grant bodies don't, but the MQ funded a study we did a few years ago on safety planning, and it's a way of trying to test out ways in which we can keep people who are suicidal safe. And that's really what I've spent the last 25 years is trying to understand suicide risk and then what we can do to hopefully help those who are most vulnerable. But what really struck me about MQ is that even though it was a relatively small grant, the personal touch you got with working with colleagues in MQ, and that's been a very clear ever since. And as I say, I'm now involved in different ways with MQ in the research programs, and I think that's what we're trying to do. I think with this podcast as well is bring a personal touch to it. Is try to convey, in some cases, really difficult stories, people's difficult stories of anguish, of pain, of mental distress and mental illness more broadly, but in a way which is human, and hopefully we'll try and do that. Well, that's our aspiration, isn't it, Craig?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a big task, but I think we're the two that can do it.
Yeah, and yeah, and we'll be able to do it, and I think but hopefully we'll both learn as well. It's like about learning from each other and from our guests,
Mhm.
and that um, and we'll cover a lot of topics. We'll cover over the course. Our plan is to cover depression, depression, suicide, grief, loneliness. I mean, there's a few of the initial topics that we're planning to cover, and it'll go beyond that. And I think, yeah, just getting that message out there that what we need to do is talk more about mental health. And as somebody who's been involved in this area for so long, like for 25 years, more than 25 years, now I think it is, but it's just seeing the change in the focus, and that now, like 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. Or actually, no, probably we wouldn't be doing this podcast. It's still that stigma.
Yeah.
And although stigma still remains, it's been addressed, and hopefully will continue to be knocked down. But we've a long road ahead still, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. Is having these conversations with lots of people from a whole range of backgrounds will help us do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you look after your own mental health?
Well, so, that's a great question, and something I've thought about pretty recently. Actually, last year I wrote a book on suicide called "When It's Darkest." It's a book on trying to understand and help people prevent suicide. And actually, it was it was written during the pandemic, and actually in that period it took me about, well, I wrote the book um, broadly speaking over 9 months, I think it was, of the pandemic. But not 9 months. You'll see why I've brought this up in a second, I hope. But in those 9 months of writing the book, what I was trying to do was bring together my professional knowledge of mental health and well-being and suicide risk in this book, together with people's stories, a sort of personal touch. But during the course of those 9 months, and even before that, actually, I was trying to work out how I would do this in a way which would be engaging for people and help tell people's stories. And so what it made me do was reflect on issues around, well, actually, how do I manage my mental health and my own mental health and well-being? Because what I then decided to do with the book was try to bring all of that together, but also to be authentic, to provide stuff about what I do, my own mental health and my own experience of grief and loss to suicide. And so I had to think long and hard for writing the book about what I do to protect myself. And of course, a lot of it is to have a close knit circle of friends and family who I can talk to. Because obviously, every day, or not obviously, but every single day, I'm thinking about suicide
Mhm.
to some degree, either in a research capacity or because or other people I know who are obviously struggling or whatever it may be. But literally, I don't think a day goes by when, and it's probably for the last 25 years that I haven't been thinking about suicide.
Mhm.
And so I have thought about really making sure I'm trying to do more to protect and bolster my own mental health, and that is by talking to friends and family, and but because it's something when I started out in this field in the 1990s. I mean, I sort of thought any 21-year-old as I was probably at that stage, you're invincible. I don't need to do anything about it. I can. My mental health wasn't a priority for me. And actually, one thing that, so this reason I'm saying this because I write about this in the book, and I remember even thinking about one of the first things that my mother said to me when I got into the field of suicide research was, oh, "My God, you're not going to kill yourself, are you?" Because she was petrified that because I'm involved in this topic, I would find it difficult to, well, in psychological terms, you might describe it as decenter, but just to keep a distance. And so over those intervening years, and again, really, I've really thought about it much more recently is so family and friends, and then so I use that a lot. But in my early 40s, I'm 48 now, and when I was in the early 40s, I really, really did struggle, and but I'd never reached out for help before. I'd never beyond that close knit family of friends. But then but I really was. I felt really empty, and um, I spent all my life just focused on my career and just driving those sorts of things forward. And so I actually reached out in I think it was 42 May of what year was that? Would have been 2001, 2002. No, I can't do the maths. No, whatever. No, 2013 it must have been. Whatever the maths are, 5 or 6 years ago. 6 years ago, I can't do the maths. So 6 years ago, and started seeing a therapist, and that has really helped me to sort of manage my own mental health and also accept who I am. And I'm pretty perfectionistic, and it's just accept that actually it's perfectly okay to not to be okay, and it's perfectly okay not to be nobody's perfect type thing.
Yeah.
And then the other bit, and then and my rant is over, is I play tennis, and that's so important for my mental health as well. So I play tennis as much as I can, and so that because when I'm on the tennis court, um, nothing else gets in because I have to really focus. So there's probably those three things: obviously therapy, family and friends, and tennis. And actually, just 2 weeks ago, or no, yeah, a really bad ankle injury, so I can't play tennis at the minute. So I'm really needing something to help me. But hopefully, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be back playing again. But I've really found even just 2.5 weeks really difficult not being able to exercise in the way that I normally do because I can't run either because I
Mm.
run as well. But tennis is the real thing. Anyway, that was a bit of a rant about how I look after my mental health and what I do. So maybe then I'll reflect and go back to you. How do you look after your mental health?
So yeah, for my mental health, what I do is, I guess, being a fan of movies, just watching a whole bunch. I've just finished a marathon of watching 50 movies in 50 days. It's
Wow.
my third year in a row of me doing this, um, and just being surrounded in the art, the different stories and stuff like that, that really helps me. Another thing is playing video games. I think from my answers, it kind of it exposes the fact that I'm very much an introvert and less of an extrovert, being around like other people. Because just for me, having my own space, um, being alone, I is when I feel the strongest, to be honest. So just having that time of, I would love to, hang out with my friends and my family, but I also need that alone time. And
Mhm.
with that alone time is where I feel like I'm really able to be myself, come into my own, and really process things. Because for me, there always feels like there's so much noise happening, and especially just day to day, especially living in London, there's always something happening. Whereas when I can like shut my door, just sometimes I'm not even listening to anything, not listening to music or watching anything, just being alone is I feel re-energized, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. No, because I think we undervalue quietness. I think at times, and no, it's something I really, even though I'm probably people would, I would think assume I'm an extrovert. I suppose I definitely have extrovert qualities, but I do like downtime in my own space to just process. Or you described it obviously as re-energizing. Have you read Susan Cain's book Quiet?
You know what? A friend of mine has, and he told me I should read it
Yeah,
because he's
brilliant book.
very much in learning about, because he's an introvert as well. We actually did the Myers-Briggs test and got exactly the same score, which explains a lot. But
Yeah.
he has done so much more research and study in being an introvert, whereas I've just practiced being an introvert, just being by myself.
No, because it's a great book, and actually, Susan Cain has just published. I think it's her second book. I think Quiet was her first book, and then she's just published this week her new book, which is #1 bestseller in the New York Times, called Bittersweet. And actually, I've started listening to on an audiobook just last night, and it's another great book. But it's looking at it's an interesting one. So she was saying what the impetus behind the book was that she's always loved listening to sad music and taking sort of pleasure out of listening to sad music. And I'm the same actually. And I spend a lot of time listening to sad music, and I don't know, resonate. I don't know what the word is. Um, but it's a great. I mean, thus far it's brilliant because it's described as this idea of being bittersweet. Everything's bittersweet, and so she's now going to take us on a journey of I think the science and the practice and well-being and people's journeys. But yeah, so it's on the back of Quiet, and Quiet also was huge. I think it also was a #1 New
So
York Times #1 bestseller as well, and incredible. But yeah, so anyway, so I think the quietness is underrated.
very much so, yeah.
Mm.
Especially when in society, extroverts are looked as the ideal, that you
Yeah,
should be out with your friends and be open and loud and stuff. Whereas, like the book, I like to be quiet sometimes. But there's
exactly.
nothing wrong with it. Yeah. Again, this is all about ending stigmas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all recognized. We're all different. We're all individual,
Mhm.
and and it's understanding everybody's mental health and everybody's needs are different. And so hopefully we'll touch on lots of these issues in the coming weeks ahead. Now I'm really really excited to do this together with you, Craig. It'll be great fun. Very different from my day job as a professor of health psychology at the University of Glasgow. And so, as I say, most of my days spent doing research, supervising students and other staff, and it's fantastically rewarding. But one of the things that I've always been passionate about since I got into mental health research and suicide prevention research is getting that message out there. As I've said already, is getting those messages out there to the people who need to hear them. And that could be people, governments, politicians, people who are struggling themselves, clinicians. But we all have a stake in mental health. And hopefully over the coming weeks, we'll be able to have some really interesting conversations, but hopefully um, share a laugh as well as
Yeah.
some more difficult moments as well. And that's what it's about, is having these real life conversations which have light and shade. And a bit like maybe Susan Cain talks about this idea of bittersweet, is that nothing's just one thing or the other. And that's what life's about, is trying to hopefully share people's stories as well as our own, as well as the research, as well as the great work that NQ does.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great plan. If you could talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to them?
My 18-year-old self, um,
Or 16?
or 16, whatever. Okay, as in my younger self, I think one of the things I struggled with all my life is I've spent my life trying to please other people, and that I'm thinking that I'm always letting other people down, and I've always been too worried about or too concerned about what other people think about me. And so I tell my 18-year-old self, just be yourself, right? Accept who you are, and um, yeah, so just be yourself, and it's you need to love yourself before others will love you in a way. So, and start just and knowing that it'll be okay, and that and you'll be fine, and and to yeah, to just yeah, be more self-accepting of who you are, and not and just accept that. And so I think that's what I've definitely learned on the intervening. Well, as I say, I'm 48 now, so 30 years since I've been 18, and just being more relaxed about who you are. What about you? What would you tell your 16 or 18-year-old self?
I would say that it always gets better, and a lot of it doesn't matter, to be honest. Because when I think about some of the issues that when I was like 16, 18, about like, dating, this person's with that person, and, you have to look a certain way, or, you have to act a certain way. It just, all of it just doesn't matter. And you just end up being a version of yourself that, when you look back, you're like, I don't even know who that was,
Yeah.
really.
Uh,
I feel like I have
yep.
more in common with the youngest version of myself, like in primary school, than I do that when I was in like secondary school. Secondary school was a complete different person.
But I think a little bit just on that question though, because your teens are so challenging. I mean,
Yeah.
and we know from all the research now, the mental health research as well, is that those adolescent years is when you see the biggest increase in mental health problems. Through, remember, as we know, mental health problems are pretty rare before puberty, and then as you go through your mid to late teens, and that's when things really um, can be so difficult for people. And so because you become so super sensitive to rejection and shame and all these other things as an adolescent. And it's just realizing that, as you say, that most things don't matter in that sense.
Yeah.
Keep the people you love close to you, and treat people with respect, and but just try to be a bit more accepting as who you are, because as you say, things will get better.
Yeah,
Hopefully
absolutely.
for most people they
Hopefully.
do. Yeah. No, I think it's no, I'm really excited. So this is our intro to getting to know us type brief podcast, and we look forward to hopefully people like you, everybody joining us in our journey and our discussions in the weeks and months ahead. So thanks for listening, and we look forward to you joining us very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.